So this is going to be the first of a two-part series on the California water management system. Tonight we're going to cover the basics of water management systems, the history of its development in California, some principles and background that will allow people to have a grasp of how a system works. Okay? Now we'll see a lot of details, we'll see a lot of elements of the system, but I want to stress at the beginning, think of the idea of a top-down conception of how do you provide the critical element of water to a population in California of 35 million people, when in fact without this system there could not be more than 1 million people in Southern California. Think of that, there's 20 million or so now. All right, so the second presentation sometime next month will focus in on one element of the entire system. That will be the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And the individual who built it, William Mulholland. And 2013 is the 100th anniversary of the completion of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. So a century ago this year, the water flowed into Los Angeles. Now, if you ask most people in Los Angeles about the current California water crisis, most likely you're going to get, a puzzled look. What crisis? What are you talking about? Right? And which obviously demonstrates once again that your sense perception cannot actually lead you to understand reality or truth. Because you go and turn the water on, or you drive down any suburban neighborhood in LA, and the water's flowing onto the lawn. What water crisis the hell are you talking about? Well, you have to go up to the San Joaquin Valley and talk to the farmers there. And then you'll find out, hey, we have a water crisis in this state right now. So the and if people of LA, the people we organize, do not actually come to realize that we do have a serious situation right now, then maybe they'll learn about it, down the road a ways. When they go to the grocery store and there's no food there because the farmers didn't have any water to grow the food. Right? Now, in the weekly report that LaRouche on June 19th, he said, look, you have to have a different viewpoint, and the viewpoint is what you believe was real was really unreal. But you're able to imagine what is real as opposed to what is unreal. And he went on to say, you only know truth by the imagination, but you have to know what the imagination should be. And that defines it. It's creativity. You make something that had not yet existed. You make it in the imagination. Then demonstrate that what you made in the imagination is the real thing. Now, the California water management system is big, the largest in the world. It is complex, the most complex in the world. It's been that way for 80 years. So I want to give you an appreciation of how that system was built, who built it, and most importantly, underline what we must do to ensure that tomorrow when you turn on the taps, the water will flow. Because tomorrow, when the water does not flow, may be much closer than you think. So let me start by asking you, where do you get your water? Where did this come from?
Shasta.
Can anyone?
I'm Shasta.
Okay, that's one. Anyone else?
Owens Valley.
Where?
Owens Valley.
Okay, that's two.
Well, it's
Cosmic radiation.
Underground.
Three.
Mono Lake.
That's Owens Valley.
Colorado.
Colorado, that's four. Not bad. Okay. All right, let's put up the first one. And you can pass this around and just take a quick look at this. So this is the major water projects making up the California water management system. Now, we'll start, well, let's answer the question. First, that gallon of water may have come from Mono Lake and Owens Valley up here down through the Los Angeles Aqueduct. Or, that's over 250 miles, okay, near 300 miles. Or it may have come from the Colorado River on the Colorado River Aqueduct, which goes into LA, Orange County right here. Right? That's 250 miles. Or it may have come from the river, up here at Lake Oroville, which is the beginning of the California State Water Project. You have Lake Oroville Dam, and on the Feather River, and it flows into the Sacramento, which flows into the Delta region in the northwest part of the Bay Area, and then flows through the San Joaquin Valley. And it's called the California Aqueduct, but it's been renamed the Pat Brown Aqueduct because it was Pat Brown that built it. And then it goes over the Tehachapis, pumped 2,000 feet. And then it splits right here. And part of it goes into LA, and part of it goes all the way to Riverside. That's nearly 600 miles, right? So, so that may have been some of it. Or, as Ray said, it might be groundwater from the San Fernando Valley. Or it might be a mixture of all of them. Right? That's where you get your water. Right? And so, let me go back, to LaRouche again for a moment. LaRouche contrasted a human outlook, the human outlook of the American system, to the empire's gamblers and genocidalists who have turned this nation from a productive, industrially developing, scientifically driven economy into a collapsing gambling casino. Now, here's what LaRouche said. I really like this quote. He says, look at this land. Look at this great land with its water systems, all these things. This great richness which the people of the United States created. This great nation. And you want to destroy this great nation, which expresses its greatness in terms of the productivity of the population, the productivity in terms of the basic economic development, in terms of technology, the idea we're going to the moon. Now the wealth of a nation lies in two things. The productivity, physical productivity, mind you, and the increase of that, including the energy flux density. And the basis of growth is that notion of energy flux density. This nation was built in phases when the intention was to invention, to technology, to growth, to improvements in agriculture, all the things that the greenies hate. Then on April 13th in Germany at the Schiller Institute conference, LaRouche really put it bluntly. How do we do that? Well, it goes back to the American system. The American system is progress, progress, progress. So I want to take you back tonight to a time when we as a nation used to think that way, rather than just LaRouche and a handful of others. So prepare to think big. That's always a good idea. Right? From the 1930s through the early 1970s, using those American system methods, Franklin D. Roosevelt and California Governor Edmund G. Pat Brown built California's amazing water management system. LaRouche has recently re-emphasized the fact that the production of food in the United States, not just California, is collapsing. And that without the North American Water and Power Alliance being built, plus other measures like water desalination, the people of the United States will begin to starve. Yes, drought conditions are a factor in the current crises, but the effect of drought did not have to produce the disaster we have now. Had NAWAPA been built beginning in the 1960s, when it was proposed, when it was organized for, when it was in front of the Congress, it would have been completed a decade ago. And the drought today would have had little or no effect on the nation's food production. So the real solution, the durable long-term solution, is NAWAPA, the policy of the Kennedy administration of the early 1960s. So a few words about NAWAPA. And here's the map. It's a continental water management system stretching from Alaska and the Yukon south all the way into Mexico, from the Pacific all the way to Hudson Bay east and west. It's a system of dams, reservoirs, canals, tunnels, power plants that will make abundant water available for every need that North American population can actually put on it. It'll reindustrialize the nation, putting millions to work, producing the components, the equipment, the machinery, and the direct work on building all the elements of the system. As a side benefit, once and for all, it will have, by the fact of its being built, that would mean environmentalism is dead. Now, Ben Dennison on the LaRouche PAC Weekly Report 3 days ago emphasized that NAWAPA is a project that gives man greater control of the water cycle, of mankind beginning to control the climate systems. He said, water's everywhere. Right? You have huge amounts of water over your head at all times. The amount of water that's evaporated into the atmosphere as vapor is on the order of about 3,000 cubic miles. He compared this to all the water runoff for the entirety of North America at about 5 cubic miles. Right? So the crisis of water in California is not due to there not being enough water around. There's plenty of water. It's just not in the right place. You know? And that's due to not building NAWAPA, for one thing. And also, we don't have the technological capability to tap into that water that's floating around above our head yet. And we don't have the capability to alter the rainfall patterns in any significant way. Okay? So the question we really want to pose is, you know, how do we make water more productive? Right? The productivity of water is when water participates in the life cycle of living processes within the biosphere. It's the water cycle, you know, of rainfall soaking into the ground, being used up by plants, and then evaporating again back up into the sky to repeat the cycle. Now, since 77% of all rainfall in the world falls in the oceans, and as Ben said, or Cody said, you know, that's ridiculous. The fish don't need it. They got plenty of water. You know? And so how do we make the water more productive? By shifting the weather patterns to make more of the rain fall over land rather than the oceans. Now, this is obviously a question far beyond the mere transferring of water from British Columbia, Yukon, Alaska, down to the lower 48 states by NAWAPA. But, you know, a few more words on this in this area, because I think it's important that people really grasp this conception of a process of the biosphere and the role of water. You know, we want water to participate in life. It does that in conjunction with photosynthesis, which is provided, the energy is provided by the sun, which is the same sun that evaporates the water off the oceans and off the land and creates the water vapor that's floating above our heads and then becomes clouds. You know. So that's how, that's how it's productive. That's how water is productive. You know, part of the life cycle of the biosphere itself. So if you take an average, say, rainfall in the San Joaquin Valley or virtually any other area, or irrigation water put into an area like the San Joaquin Valley, then about 2.7 times each drop of water will be used. Okay? That it be used by a plant, it'll be given off by transpiration, it'll evaporate up into the clouds, it'll fall as rain again, and an average of 2.7 times that will occur before that drop of water somehow then makes it out to the ocean, only to start the cycle once again. Now, a dramatic demonstration of this process is seen in the National Geographic piece called Water Currents in February of this year. University of California, Irvine researcher, professor, reports on his study that demonstrates that because of the irrigation of the Central Valley of California, evaporation in the valley doubled. Right? You're pouring a lot more water in, so there's more water for the sun to work its magic and turn it to vapor. Right? But it just didn't just go straight up. It created a dynamic within the weather system of the entire Southwest such that after it evaporated, it moved east southeast, right, into Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. And what the study shows is that this increased rain in the Colorado, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico area by 15%. And it also triggered what's called the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of California monsoon. It triggered a pulling in of the monsoons, which brought even more rain into the southwest there. And all that extra rainfall has resulted in a 28% increase in the flow of the Colorado River. Think of that. Over 1/4 of the flow of the Colorado River is due to the irrigation in the Central Valley. Okay? Anyway, we'll return to productivity of water in a minute here. Now, as we have stressed, repeatedly, again and again, and we make it a very fundamental principle, that man is the only species that uses fire deliberately. We increase the productive power of fire by increasing the energy flux density of the fuel source that we use to produce fire. We move from wood to coal to oil to nuclear. Each new form being more powerful, more energy dense, and that is a characteristic of man. Now, man is also the only creature on the planet who increases the water flux density of his productive activity. Okay? He does this by moving water to where it's needed and altering and transforming a qualitative change in the actual flow of water. Man alters the flow of rivers. He puts water on land where there is none, and he uses water to produce electricity. Man increases the productivity of water just as he increases the productivity of fire. Now, where are we? Okay, the distinctive feature of the western part of the United States, west of the Mississippi, is the Great Plains and the Great American Desert. Right? Here's a map of the 20-inch rainfall line. West of the line, less than 20-inch average rainfall. Right? And 20 inches, well, I'll give you the average rainfall in Los Angeles is 15 inches a year. Right? So this entire area, half the country, is like Los Angeles mainly, except for maybe Seattle and Portland or something. But this is the characteristic of the country, right? Now here's a map of California deserts, and as you can see, the entirety of Southern California is deserts. Now that's part of the Great American Desert, which actually extends from deep into Mexico all the way up into Canada. And the only area that's not desert really is along the coastline. Now, here's in 1902, a little background here, and very ironically, the first environmentalist president, Teddy Roosevelt, created the Bureau of Reclamation. The Bureau of Reclamation had one job: build irrigation and hydroelectric power plants all over the West to deal with the problem of the entire West essentially being desert. Well, that's what the Bureau of Reclamation did. And it did it well, and it did it massively, and at least up until about the early 1970s. But today, this figure is really quite something, right? The projects built by the Bureau of Reclamation provide water to 1/3 of the people of the United States. But today, driven by the empire's intent to depopulate the planet, the policy of our government today, or rather our empire-occupied government, is to shut it all down and destroy the national and regional water management systems. Today we already have severe rationing of water in California. You know, people in LA may not know it. But in the San Joaquin Valley, the farmers are receiving 20% of the water they have requested for this summer. 3.5 million acres of prime agricultural productive land in the San Joaquin Valley is not getting enough water right now. The same occurred in 2009. It's not just this year's problem. In the Imperial Valley, bordering Mexico, 40,000 acres of the most productive farmland in the world lies fallow. No crops being grown on it. Why? Well, because all the water has been sent to San Diego, 180,000 acre feet of water. This year, last year, was somewhat a little different figure. But that's the figure for this year is 180,000 acre feet of water. Now, and we'll come back to the measurement in a few minutes. And it'll get worse since the drought continues. Last year was the 5th driest year on record. This year, which actually this year ended on June 30th. It was July 1st to June 30th is when the year is measured on water. So the year ended. It was the 4th driest year on record. Now, without rain over the next couple of months or so, Roosevelt Lake, the Lake Mead behind Hoover Dam is likely to be at about 50% capacity. Now, I think most of you have been to Hoover Dam and looked, and you see where, by the markings on the rock, how high the lake is sometimes. Now, think of it, and if you were there in the last year or 2 or 3, it looked like it was down 50 feet or something like that. Well, think of it falling another 100 feet or more. That's where it's heading right now. So, here's a map showing the conditions of California's reservoirs on June 22nd, a few weeks ago. Right? And I just point out a couple because some of them don't, or just don't have the information. Right? But you look at Lake Oroville, it's at 75%. That's the beginning of the State Water Project. Lake Shasta, 67%. That's the beginning of the Central Valley Project. Trinity Lake, part of the Central Valley Project also. But here's the key one, San Luis Reservoir, right here. 21% of capacity. Now I know some people, including myself, stopped there on the way up to San Francisco a couple weeks ago. Right? But the San Luis Reservoir is a critical reservoir of the entire California management system, and it's 21% at capacity. It's never been that low. And
what percent does it use per year of normal use? How much would it draw down?
Well, it'll kind of be covered in a little bit here. Now, this is San Luis Reservoir at 21%. This picture was taken on June 28th, 2 weeks ago. Or 2 weeks ago. And it's at, it's more than 150 feet below the normal level. So this is serious stuff. In California, 9.6 million acres of land are irrigated. San Joaquin Valley, actually 3.75 million acres are not going to get enough water out of the 9.6 million of irrigated land in the state. Worse, since tree crops die in the summer, if they don't have water, the long-term damage to California agriculture is really getting serious. So for example, the state almond crop could be devastated. And the state almond crop is big. 780,000 acres of producing almond trees. Right? I mean, that's 750,000 acres of almond trees alone. This affects the entire nation, since California really produces a huge portion of the nation's food. The Central Valley, which is the largest semi-continuous expanse of irrigated land in the world, provides 1/3 of all produce consumed in the United States. 20% of all U.S. milk production is in California. Now, let me say a few words about measuring water, because we'll see some figures now. I don't want people to be schwammerized and confused a little bit. So, for the purpose of water management systems, the standard measure for water at rest, sitting in a lake or reservoir, is in units of volume, either gallons or acre feet. Now, an acre foot is 1 foot is the amount of water 1 foot deep, covering an acre of land. Now, some people don't know how big an acre of land is, so let's answer that. An acre of land is a square about 208 feet on each side. Okay? If you had, in your mind, it's about the size of a football field. Okay? So that's an acre foot. There's 325,851 gallons in 1 acre foot. Okay? And 1 acre foot can provide the amount of water necessary for 2 average-sized families for 1 year. Okay? So 1 acre foot, 2 families for a year. That's a good measure to keep in your mind as I throw a few more at you. The acronym NAFY, million acre feet per year. How much water is shipped from this place to this place? 4.3 million acre feet a year. And so just with a little bit there. Now a little more background. Water management systems are complexes of rivers, reservoirs, canals, tunnels, pumping stations, levees, siphons, generators, and pipes that store water and move it from one area to another. Such systems have existed as long as human civilization has existed. So for example, maybe you've seen the pictures of the Roman aqueducts that are in Italy and Spain and even in Germany and Austria, still standing today, built 2,000 years ago. Now the Roman Empire, this is the only contribution the Roman Empire ever made to civilization, was the building of very advanced, water management systems. Now the system can be as simple as a ditch from a stream to a field, or it can be like that of California. As I've said before, the largest and most complex in the world, at least for now. At least until China finishes this impressive, magnificent move south roof water south to north that's under construction right now. Of the total average consumption of water in California, 70% is provided by the man-made water management system, and about 30% comes from groundwater, which is pumped from the earth. They're called aquifers. And with the increased use of groundwater in drought years, it go up to 40 or even 50% of the water being used will become groundwater in the state as the droughts get worse. But with the increased use of groundwater,
Pat, hang on a second, she has a question.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna ask you, did you say 70% of the water that's used in California comes from water projects?
I
Did
can't
you
hear.
say that 70% of the water that's used in California comes from water projects?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so with the increased use of groundwater, you get water tables fall, the land starts to sink, wells have to be dug deeper, and the quality of water declines. Now here's a picture of really dramatizes this subsidence problem of the land collapsing. Now, that's 1977, and this is San Joaquin Valley. Right? The land level in 1955 was here. That was ground level. 1925, it was here. Now this is 1977. That's 35 years, 35 years ago.
If you fill the aquifers back up, does the land go back up?
I would imagine so. But when the land subsides, is that a bad thing? I mean, it's just going down. You're still standing on the same piece of land, essentially. No, because rugs crack, pipes break, railroad tracks are skewed. It makes a mess. So, now, during the 19th century, as California's population began rapidly growing, agriculture